and straight good timing. Uh, I'm Erin Feichtinger. I am the policy director here at the Women's Fund of Omaha. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, we're going to talk about access to reproductive health care and reproductive justice. I want to clarify a few things. At the Women's Fund, we trust people to make decisions around their own lives and specifically their reproductive health care. We all have personal beliefs around abortion. However, our work at the Women's Fund is rooted in the value of bodily autonomy, meaning it is not our place to make decisions for someone else when it comes to their bodies and their health. And the conversation today will be rooted in those values. So I want to be very clear. If you came to debate abortion access or people's ability to seek the health care they need, this is not the space for you. Questions that are based in opposition to these stated values will not be elevated to the group. I also want to pause and say it very clearly that abortion access is legal in Nebraska right now. It is that way because last session we worked collaboratively with other abortion advocacy organizations and senators, many of whom you're going to meet here on this panel, as well as hundreds of Nebraskans who rallied, testified, showed up, and spoke out, demanding a right to have control over their own bodies. And after the Roe decision, we stopped a special session from being called. And before that, we stopped 3 extreme anti-abortion bills in the last legislative session. We did that, all of us, everybody on this panel and everybody who's attending in all of our networks. So let's find out how we continue our momentum, how we do this again, and keep abortion access in Nebraska. After all, it is what the majority of Nebraskans want, to protect abortion access in this state. So today we'll start with an update on the legal landscape from Scout Richters, the wonderful Scout Richters, Legal and Policy Council at the ACLU of Nebraska. We're going to talk about what the patient experiences look like post-Dobbs, from the exceptional Andy Curry Grubb. I need to get my book, my thesaurus out, because all of you are so wonderful and I don't want to repeat repeat adjectives. And then we're going to hear about the disproportionate impact of abortion bans on women of color and the connection between abortion access and racial equity from the exquisite, did I already say that? Naomi Thompson, from IB Black Girl, and a discussion with 2 of our fiercest and most quotable, I would say, allies in the Nebraska legislature, Senator Megan Hunt and Senator Jen Day. Did everyone feel really validated? Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So I'm going to turn it right over to Scout to share with us her knowledge about the national landscape.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you, everyone. I'm honored to be here with everyone today. So, as you all know, in June, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey with the Dobbs decision. And in Dobbs, the Supreme Court held that there's no longer a federal constitutional right to abortion, and that abortion is no longer included in the 14th Amendment's right to privacy. And what the Dobbs decision did is open the door for states to ban abortion at any stage in pregnancy. And states are now essentially free to regulate abortion to any extent, at least for now, until we have other case law. So Dobbs has, as predicted, dramatically changed abortion access throughout the country and will continue to do so, likely restricting more and more people's access in the coming months. It's estimated that 36 million people have lost or will soon lose access to abortion. There are, of course, too many harms to name that come from banning abortion in the time that we have here. But I do think it's important to summarize just a few. Number 1, people are being forced to remain pregnant when they don't want to be pregnant. Number 2, the Supreme Court has allowed state lawmakers with no medical training to remove the medical standard of care for pregnancy, putting the health and lives of pregnant people at risk. Number 3, because doctors cannot practice under the actual standard of care for pregnancy, they have to assess legal liability even in emergency situations, over the needs of their patients, which obviously should be taking precedent. This is creating hurdles from everything to malpractice insurance, to being able to even retain providers, or to remain or enter into obstetrics and gynecology as a field. We have the growing criminalization of pregnancy outcomes and the prosecution under laws that were never meant to be used to police pregnant people and their bodies. And again, those are just some of the harms that come with banning abortion. We really don't have time to name all of them. But I also wanted to make clear that whether it be a total ban or a 6-week ban or a 12-week ban or 16 or whatever number of weeks, with or without exceptions, any further restriction on care will cause immense harm, and immense harm will come from any further restriction on care. Restrictions across the country have left patients and providers in unthinkable limbo, and pregnant people in unnecessary and, again, unthinkable situations, risking their health. This includes abortion providers, OBGYNs, and other doctors. This includes pregnant people who don't want to be pregnant, and it includes pregnant people who do want to be pregnant. We have examples of the consequences of abortion bans from other states, and it's not just the states with total bans or 6-week bans. It's also in states with bans that were touted or promoted as reasonable or a compromise. And, it includes things like people being admitted to emergency rooms for sepsis because they were denied abortions for non-viable pregnancies. People told their emergency situations weren't dire enough and to come back when it got worse. Doctors being told not to care for ectopic pregnancies until they ruptured. And as Erin said, I do want to reiterate that abortion remains legal here in Nebraska, again, because of the work of senators like Senator Day and Senator Hunt leading the charge, stopping LB 933, which would have made abortion illegal in the state right now had it passed back in April. But in closing, for this portion, I do want to say that we already have so many restrictions on care, which already make access difficult or impossible for so many Nebraskans, which I think just really highlights the importance of ensuring that there are no further restrictions on care here in Nebraska. So thank you. I'm happy to be part of this panel.
And if anyone, thank you for that, Scout. Well, I don't know if thank you is right. It's fairly horrifying. Like, that's what we're heading towards. But yeah, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, making sure that we're prepared for any future discussions that are coming from our electeds when we head into next session. And that's a really good segue to talk about what the patient experience is looking like here on the ground. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Andy.
Yes, and Dr. Boyle's comment in the chat is very timely and very accurate. That part of so let me just back up for just a second. That just kind of struck me because I think it's that uncertainty that is really having the greatest impact on patient care here in Nebraska right now. One of the things that we are seeing is just an increase in demand. We are seeing folks travel from other states where abortion has been banned, and in some cases even from states where it maybe has not been banned entirely, but new restrictions are in place that make it unfeasible. So Planned Parenthood here in Nebraska is part of a 5-state regional affiliate. We cover Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And I bring this up because I feel like we're at a point where state lines have gotten really blurry when it comes to making sure that patients can get access to care. And I think our affiliate is a really interesting kind of example of how that's working right now. So here directly in Nebraska, what we are seeing is an increase in demand. Nebraska is very interestingly located in relation to some of the states that have banned abortion already. We have 3 of our 7 states around us that have completely banned abortion: Missouri, Wyoming, and South Dakota. So that is a place we're seeing increased numbers of patients from those states, but we're seeing folks from Texas and Oklahoma, and some of those states that have had restrictions for some time, and have been trying to figure out the easiest states to go to. Nebraska is becoming one of those states that is easier to come to. We're seeing folks from Florida and from Georgia as well, because one of the things that we're realizing is that folks are trying to figure out what's easiest and most convenient for their lives, right? So they may have a family member that lives here or somewhere else, and that's the easiest place for them to get to. So a huge part of what we've been seeing and doing in Planned Parenthood, particularly in this region, is working with every single patient individually to figure out the best way to make sure they get care. We've increased significantly our patient services team. After the fall of Roe, we saw, these are like the folks that if you call to make an appointment with us, they're the first folks you're going to talk to. We saw a 50% increase in calls to that team the day after Roe was overturned. So demand for information and care is significant right now. That has sustained at about a 15 to 20% increase in calls every day since then. And we're getting calls from all over. So making sure that we are working with each patient individually to get them to the most convenient place for them to get the care that they need in the most timely fashion. As you can imagine, one of the things that's been really challenging is an increase in the demand for care in states where it is still legal, while also managing the uncertainty, which makes it really, really challenging to hire staff to meet this increased demand. So this is one of the pieces that we've been really working hard on in Planned Parenthood, is making sure that as that demand increases, that we're also able to increase our services so that we can meet that demand. And as you can imagine, that's not an easy thing to do. Like, abortion doctors are not just like waiting in the wings, ready to jump in at a moment's notice. It's really, really challenging to find physicians who are willing and able to provide abortion care. There's a huge amount of stigma associated with it. There's safety concerns that folks have, rightly so. And then just the uncertainty, like Dr. Boyle said, relocating to a state like Nebraska when you're not positive that it's going to stay legal here is a big ask of someone. So part of what we're having to do is really piece together as much support as we possibly can for patients that are seeking abortion access. So, we have doctors that are coming in from out of state. We have doctors that are driving from other, we have planes, trains, automobiles, the whole 9 yards, to get folks here to provide care to patients. We've also increased, one of the things we've seen is that there are a lot more really complicated cases than there used to be. Kind of to Scout's point, abortion has long been something that has been restricted and had unnecessary barriers in the way, and that has only increased, right? So we still have some of those in Nebraska, and then we have all these other states that have more of those now as well. So, some of the examples that we're seeing is like, folks, we had a patient, this was a while back, but they ended up driving a U-Haul to their appointment in Nebraska from Texas because it was the only vehicle that they could find available to rent in the time frame that they had to get to their appointment. So we have this network of abortion navigators that are working with patients like that, where, this is not a simple, like, make an appointment, go to the doctor, get what you need, and then go home. We're seeing a lot more complicated situations, both for folks who are pregnant and do not want to be pregnant, but as has kind of been alluded to, we're also really seeing an increase in those patients who really did want to be pregnant, but because of complications or something like that, they are choosing to have an abortion. But the uncertainty that surrounds that for physicians right now in so many states, even right here in Nebraska where it's still fully legal, is creating a lot of uncertainty. And so we're working with patients that are in situations like that as well. So it's gotten incredibly complicated. It's gotten pretty heartbreaking when you're actually like having the conversations with folks that are going through some of these things. And it's become like increasingly clear how crucial it is for us to continue working to protect abortion access in Nebraska at all costs. No bans, no reduction in gestational limit. We will not accept any further restrictions on abortion in Nebraska. Thanks.
Andy, just to follow up with that, one thought and a question. Anti-abortion activists have been saying for years that their goal is not just to make abortion illegal, but to make it unthinkable. And that really seems like this sort of web of consequences, right? Or this ripple of consequences that come from bans and uncertainty, that's the plan. So that was one thought. And then just how can folks, if at all, how can they help you all and providers in Nebraska generally? Is there anything that you ask folks to do to help you?
I mean, I think, honestly, I think being a part of this work at the policy level is a huge way that folks can be helpful, which I know is kind of why we're all here. So I would say, particularly with this group that I know is super passionate and engaged in this topic, that would be number one. I think there are other things that are really helpful to us right now. One is staying connected to our local abortion fund, which is Nebraska Abortion Resources, or NEAR. They are, Planned Parenthood can help with covering the cost of a procedure with a lot of patients, but the abortion fund is where they can get support for travel costs, lost wages, childcare, things like that. So staying connected to NEAR and donating to them. And exactly, you can do a monthly recurring donation. That's a fantastic place that really supports all people that are getting care in the state of Nebraska. And then the last thing I would say is just kind of staying connected to us on a volunteer basis too. One of the things that we're seeing is an increase in protest activity, particularly in our Lincoln clinic. And so we are regularly trying to make sure that we have patient escorts that are available to help patients stay comfortable and safe as they're coming in for their appointments. We kind of bring folks on under that volunteer activity on like a quarterly basis. So just kind of staying connected, signing up to volunteer if that's something you're interested in it. And then, we can be in touch on the specifics.
That's great. And I put the NEAR link in the chat, and also mentioned that they've got great merch if anyone wants to wear your support for abortion access out loud all across Nebraska in every space. I am going to turn it over to Naomi Thompson from IB Black Girl to talk about the critical intersection between access to abortion and the fight to advance racial equity in our state and our nation, actually across the world, right, Naomi? Just everywhere.
The world, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
All right, cool. Did you plan on sharing the one page, or is that already up? Or I guess I just can't see it. It's up there.
We just shared it in the chat.
In the chat. Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so okay, hey everyone. My name is Naomi Thompson. I'm the policy and advocacy manager of IB Black Girl. And just for y'all who don't know, IB Black Girl is a reproductive justice organization that leads with boldness, innovation, and inspiration. We create a change-making culture that centers Black women, femmes, and girls. Our goal is to expand access and resources to quality and culturally relevant maternal health services through policy, research, and organizing, while amplifying the voices and experiences of Black women and birthing people. So I wanted to talk to everybody today about the intersection of reproductive rights and reproductive justice. I wanted to kind of lay out the framework and kind of get some clarity on because I know things can get muddy between the two. So reproductive justice addresses the systemic oppressions that disallow all people to access reproductive health care and their reproductive rights as they decide, how they decide, and when they decide. The central values of reproductive justice is dismantling systems, autonomy, and liberation, especially when it comes to healthcare. It can only be achieved when all women and folks with reproductive systems have the complete economic, social, and political power and resources to make healthy decisions about our bodies in all areas of our lives. Reproductive justice does encompass reproductive rights, such as access to abortion. You can see on the handout that was put in the chat the definitions of both terms, but I'll just read them out just in case people aren't looking at it. So reproductive rights is centered around legal right to access sexual and reproductive health care services like abortion and birth control. Reproductive justice links reproductive rights with the social, political, and economic inequities at both a system and individual level that affect one's ability to access and have choice. Unlike reproductive rights, reproductive justice goes beyond contraception, abortion access, and the My Body, My Choice campaigns throughout the United States. The framework demands consideration of all the ways reproductive health can be affected by other factors. The following must be taken into account to achieve reproductive justice. And I pulled this from the Social Determinants of Health. I think it's like Healthy People 2030 by the federal government. Race, economic stability, education access and quality, neighborhood and built environment, social and community context. So for example, like with built environment, is there transportation to get to and from doctor's appointments? Are all people free from racial discrimination in the healthcare system to receive adequate reproductive care? When it comes to education, like, do all folks with the capacity for pregnancy have access to accurate or any sex education to make the best decisions for their bodies, no matter what age? Things of that nature. I did want to really hone in on the guiding principles of reproductive justice. So center and uplift the most impacted. That means doing outreach to Black and Brown communities, being a proper ally in situations like that. Address and dismantle intersecting systems of oppression and prioritizing race, class, and gender, because we all know like those identities intersect and you can't address one without the other, kind of counteractive. And then build power and choice for folks navigating these various systems. So that goes with like community empowerment, community organizing, getting people to the Capitol to testify, stuff like that. In addition to protecting our right to choose, I wanted to list off some other policies that center reproductive justice. I'll just list a few, y'all can read them, but for example, extending postpartum coverage under Medicaid from 60 days to 12 months. That is important. Access to insurance, access to healthcare, all goes right under there. Requiring implicit bias training for healthcare professionals. Requiring companies and organizations to provide comprehensive paid family leave and affordable childcare. Just things of that nature to uplift people's autonomy, economic liberation, and birth justice experiences. So, but yeah, thank you all for your time. So awesome seeing everyone's faces.
Yeah, Naomi, thank you. Always lovely to see you. I think that it was such an important point, and I do hope that folks, we'll send out the links to this one pager, but keep that one pager handy just as a reminder that when we work on this, right, when we work on access to abortion care and reproductive health care, we're never just talking about one thing. And we all know that, right? We all know the intersections, why housing is important, why economic justice is important, why access to food and transportation and all those things are important, but we can forget a little bit if we're laser focused on this one issue. So I appreciate that, Naomi. And just a reminder for folks, if you joined us on our economic security call, there will be bills introduced around childcare subsidies and making sure folks have access to those, and IBBG, as well as a truly strange group of collaborators across the policy world are making a push for postpartum Medicaid expansion. So but yes, look out for that fun buddy comedy coming in the legislative session. Everyone here knows what's up. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to both Senator Day and Senator Hunt. I'll let you guys decide who wants to talk. But to talk sort of generally, like, what are you preparing for the session? Jen, I know you're laid up with a back injury, I believe. So hopefully just resting and Googling things, taking phone calls. What are you expecting will be introduced? What are you hearing? Any plans for proactive legislation to protect reproductive care in Nebraska? And then I just thought it would be worth mentioning, we saw a lot of news coverage after the election that all of our issues are safe because of a so-called filibuster proof majority or minority. I don't remember what the word was. And I would be interested to hear both of your thoughts on maybe why we shouldn't sit back and just rely on that filibuster proof majority. So I'll just open that up to either one of you who wants to start.
What do you think, Jen? You look beautiful, by the way, even on your back with your back injury.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here coming from my recliner today, but I'll be ready by January 4th. So it'll be all good. But
I don't even know if I'll be ready. Real talk. Like,
none of us are ever really ready. But
okay.
We'll be there. Yeah, go ahead.
So I didn't really like prepare anything for this. I thought we could just maybe talk and have a conversation about what we're seeing. But one thing I want all of you viewers to understand is that you know about as much as I do, seriously. Like, we don't know what kind of bills are going to be dropped in the first 10 days. We don't know if there's any surprises up anybody's sleeve. We have to be prepared for any scenario, basically. And there are so many like levers and procedural things that can impact what happens in Nebraska with an abortion ban. For example, in the next few weeks, senators are going to be meeting by their congressional district. This is the only time that we ever caucus in the Nebraska legislature. Is we meet before session, usually by congressional district, to select leadership for the executive board. And every congressional district sends 2 members to the executive board, and then the entire legislature at large elects a president of the executive board, or a chairman and a vice chairman or chairperson. So the executive board has the ability to make a bill a quote unquote super priority, which would give the speaker more control over how the bill is managed on the floor. So my point is, like, even these executive board elections are really, really, really important, because if there's enough people on the executive board to say, okay, we're going to make an abortion ban a super priority, then they can control the order of the amendments, the order of the motions, which is the kinds of tools that I use to hold up debates. So if they're able to do that, then I almost can't do anything we almost can't do anything to prevent that bill from moving through. So that's a very important trick to understand. But what's kind of getting widely spoken about as a rumor is that we'll probably get a full abortion ban, a full no exception, the most draconian, cruel thing ever. And then we'll probably get a 12-week ban. And I see a scenario where they introduce both, and then maybe they're able to pick up more votes with a 12-week ban. And so that's what ends up passing. Just the further chipping away of abortion rights. And what I'm really trying to get our allies in the legislature to understand is why we can't compromise, why a 12-week ban is not a win for Nebraskans, why sometimes on these issues of human rights, we really don't need to meet in the middle. Honestly, the status quo that we have in Nebraska right now, the 20-week ban with exceptions, that is a compromise. That's a compromise that we came to in 2015. And for my money, that's working fine right now. It's not my favorite abortion policy. It's not my favorite law that Nebraska could have, but given what's happening in this country, a win for me in 2023 would be holding the line, perhaps not expecting to gain any ground, but just defending the institution and holding the line on abortion rights as they are today. If you want to jump in, Jen.
Yeah, I agree, Megan. And I think there's a lot of things at play in the upcoming session that people are already discussing. There's also discussion of rules changes, just like there is every time. And sometimes I don't think people understand all of the inner workings, some of what Senator Hunt had already mentioned, but any change in the institution itself and how the institution functions is going to interrupt our ability to hold the line on really bad legislation. And so that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be at play very early. And so that's one thing that we're expecting, that we're hopefully going to be able to hold on to important things like 33 votes for cloture, secret ballots for committee leadership, because again, we know the first step in any piece of legislation is getting the bill out of committee. And then in terms of what Senator Hunt also mentioned, caucusing, we will make the decision about who we are going to elect to committee on committees. And then from there, the committee on committees decides who gets on what committee. And that's also a huge important step. You've seen lots of poll motions happening in the last several sessions on these really, especially on the really draconian abortion bans. And that's likely to happen if it doesn't get out of committee. So keeping it in committee doesn't make it safe. But at the same time, it's still an extra step that has to be taken. And so that's why we want to make sure that there are no changes in the institution and the rules. Yes, we're going to see really awful abortion bans coming. I think that's to be expected, but I think to your point, Aaron, about people talking about how Democrats have, the quote was that originally we thought Republicans had a filibuster-proof majority. And what that meant was they had enough sure votes relative to cloture, 33 votes, that they could push any bill through that they wanted. And then that changed with a couple of candidates flipping to Democrats, or a couple of races flipping to Democrat that we thought would be Republicans, or one in particular here in Omaha. And then it was said that Democrats had enough people in the legislature to hold the line on cloture, meaning they would only have 32 votes on their side, and then we would have the other 17. Yes, there are 17 registered Democrats in the legislature, but that's not indicative of how anyone is going to vote on any given bill, right? So, and the thing that I think people need to understand, and I don't want to say this to try to get you all to lose hope about these things, because there's definitely hope, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But you have to understand that nothing is safe, and we are in a really strange period of time in history where things, anti-intellectualism, like all of this stuff is really amplified. And so we're going to literally hold on for our dear lives in the next couple of years. That's my focus. Yes, I have bills that are my priorities and important things that I want to talk about. For me, the most important thing is upholding the integrity of the legislature and making sure that it continues to function properly way after Senator Hunt and I are gone. And so in terms of having 17 registered Democrats, we're going to have a new speaker. We're going to have a whole new cast of characters coming in. And And sometimes it literally, it depends on the way the wind blows the morning that the bill ends up on the floor, right? We don't know. Depends on any deal making that other senators are making. That would include Democrats. There are Democrats that will make deals on important pieces of legislation to get their own bills through or passed or to the next stage of debate. So nothing is safe. So don't let anybody tell you that everything's going to be okay. We still need all of your support. We still need you to show up and testify. If you can, send in letters of opposition or support, make phone calls, send emails, show up at the Capitol. We still need all of that. And we can do our jobs and hold the line on those types of bills, but it's still going to be really tough. So I think that's, my perspective is holding on to where we're at now, not letting anything else get through, not letting anyone understand that, 12 weeks or 15 weeks is a compromise. And I think we have support. I think Dr. Boyle, yes, a 12-week ban mostly hurts those with planned desired pregnancies where there is a fetal anomaly. Yes, Dr. Boyle has been a fantastic advocate here in the state in rallying some of her colleagues as well, showing up at the Capitol, and making sure that the professionals are speaking from experience in terms of we are attempting to regulate the practice of medicine at the end of the day. That's what we're doing. And we should never be doing those types of things. So continuing to have those discussions with colleagues, making sure that it's really clear what we're doing here, I think is going to be the most important thing for me. And really, I guess personally, being a voice on the mic of reality and truth is going to be really important to me in the upcoming sessions. I think that's something that we hear a lot of the opposite of, false narratives about what bills do and what they don't do. And some of this wild stuff that gets pulled out of, awful, tabloid type news and then pulled onto the floor of the legislature and it's spoken by policymakers is really dangerous. So I think pushing back against some of that stuff is going to be a big priority for me as well.
Yeah, that was really well said. Everything I've read in the press or on Twitter or heard people say or heard the chairwoman of our party say is about how we can hold the line because we have 17. Thank fucking God we elected 17 Democrats. Like, that's not how it works in Nebraska. As all of you know, we don't have a whip. We don't have a majority or minority leader. We don't have caucuses. We don't ever go the same way. And the same is true for Republicans traditionally. And it's a more homogenous conservative group going into 2023, but there's still a lot of differences in ideologies on both sides. And that's why historically in Nebraska, you've seen Democrats vote against gun safety legislation. You've seen Republicans vote for climate change legislation. You see all kinds of overlap and opportunities for us to reach somebody who, if we were in a purely partisan institution, they would just not be reachable because the political cost would be too high. I'll just say, because their records are public, Senator Wayne has pledged that he will oppose an abortion ban, but I would like to confirm that, he's one where I feel like he could go either way at the end of the day. Senator Mike McDonnell, another registered Democrat, has openly supported abortion bans. Senator Lynn Walls, who has the sweetest, purest heart, she, her views about abortion are very examined and very heartfelt and deeply felt by her, but she needs to be reached out to by constituents as well. And just because of somebody's party, we really don't know which way they're going to end up going. And we can't count on anybody's vote for anything, no matter what issue it is that we're talking about. What I would ask Nebraskans to do is, this is a huge ask. I don't even know if we can do it, but we got to keep the Capitol full. We have to keep the Capitol physically full all session, because what we're talking about is human rights and forced birth. And something that, you know, if you want to take a conservative argument with it, it's really going to affect the economy of this state. Like we've seen it affect other states where they've put full bans in place. If rural Nebraska is serious about, you know, expanding their access to healthcare and getting providers to serve their communities, you know, maybe we shouldn't be regulating their practices this way. So even if you've never been to the Capitol before, even if you've never talked to a lawmaker before, like whatever, it doesn't matter. I would love for you, if you can at any time in the 90 days of our session, get a group together, show up in person, and try to talk to some of my colleagues about why this issue matters to you. There's really no right or wrong way to say it. Just speak from the heart and let them know that you are a real person. You're not the same 12 people out in the rotunda who are there on, you know, every issue every day. That you took off work, that you came because it fucking matters to you. And this is something that I think my colleagues need to hear because they just don't know what they're messing with.
I agree. I'm going to just say one more thing. Sorry, Erin.
You're okay.
Yes.
This
Senator
is your
Hunt
panel.
always saying the perfect things. Yes. And, you know, I think we get people, and we need both people who are really passionate and angry and upset, but we also sometimes, a lot of my colleagues are already shut down to the conversation. And so they only feel validated when people are yelling and angry and coming at them. And do they deserve to be yelled at? And do you deserve to be very angry? Absolutely. But I think, like Senator Hunt said, showing your heart, sharing your story, sometimes it's difficult to have that conversation from, you know, a diplomatic perspective when you're really passionate. But I think that's one of the most important ways that you can get your point across. Hey, I've never been to the Capitol before. This is my story. I'm sharing this with you. I feel very strong about it because of this. I think those emotional, personal, honest, real stories are really important in this whole process. Yes, and keeping the Capitol full as often as we can, I think is going to be really, really important. I had one more point and I totally forgot what it was, but I'll come back to it maybe.
I'm sure it'll come back to you. A lot of excellent points made and a lot of great questions raised here. I will say, you know, I've talked to a few folks in this work so far who really don't feel comfortable sharing their personal stories about abortion. And this is just a reminder to everybody that you are not required to share your story with senators. There are other ways to talk about this. There's other ways to support this work too. I've always had this dream of, you know, like a casserole sign up. If you're not comfortable going to the Capitol, are you willing to bake a casserole for the folks who are there? That may be a really silly thing that I hold on to just to get through this work. So stay connected to our organizations, follow Jen, follow Megan, follow IB Black Girl, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, Women's Fund, Nebraska Abortion Resources. All of us are going to be having calls to action. Most of them are coordinated. All of us will have different ways to get involved. And what Jen was saying about, and Megan was saying in the chat too, about the sort of organic storytelling, the necessity of talking to your senators. We will also plan to share some resources in a follow-up email. Planned Parenthood has great guides about how to talk about abortion with folks who might not be willing to listen. So we'll share some of those things. I'm going to try to loop a bunch of questions together since they're all somewhat related, and everyone can just answer as they see fit. There's a question in the Q&A about, is there a concern that Nebraska will increase restrictions to access to other areas of reproductive health care like endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome? Those treatments and meds often fall under family planning and can be stigmatized as well. So just that question, and broadly too, you know, we hear from anti-abortion folks that like, this is it, all we want. We just want an abortion ban. What are your thoughts on that? And this is open to the whole panel. And then a sort of follow-up question about unintended consequences. This is also a conversation about why exceptions why all of us here on this call will not accept exceptions, and maybe talking a little bit about why that is. It sound reasonable? Isn't this really not that bad? Like, maybe we could flesh that out a little bit. That was a lot, but feel free to address it in whatever ways you want.
Yeah, I'll just try to briefly answer. And if anybody else wants to chime in, feel free. But yes, I think we know that they're never going to stop at any 12-week or 15-week or whatever it is. They're coming for contraception. They're coming for emergency contraception. They're coming for all of those things. We know that. I don't think they will try to do it first, but I do believe that some of that could potentially be included in the full abortion ban, depending on the language of the bill. That's always on the table. That was on the table when we discussed it last year. They will absolutely come for it. And I think that's kind of what Dr. Boyle had mentioned earlier, is some of the uncertainty that comes with regulations, regardless of if there's a full ban or not, is it creates uncertainty for physicians in terms of how they're going to be able to go forward, particularly in cases of fertility treatments and that type of stuff. It doesn't allow physicians to use their best practices and their best professional, their fully informed professional decision-making. It puts it, I sat down with a physician who is a chief medical officer locally here in Omaha, and, he was very emphatic about no more restrictions and discussing what he's talking to his colleagues in other states. And this was really stark even for me. He said that they're saying that these bills and restrictions, abortion bans, are setting back the practice of medicine decades. Because it is turning the decision to provide someone with care into a legal decision versus a medical decision. And I think those are the unintended consequences that you mentioned, Erin, is doctors are being forced to consult attorneys of when can I provide this person with the care that I know they need now. When is it going to be legal? And that's the gray area. That's why we can't add any further restrictions onto what we already have, is you're always creating a gray area for a physician to make a decision, and you're putting it into the hands of attorneys, and that's not their job. It's not our job as senators either. So, you hear about the issues of, I think like Scout mentioned, people being sent home when they need care now, having to get into really dangerous medical situations, like going into sepsis, getting very sick, in order to be able to be provided care, when that whole issue could have been prevented. And not to mention the financial burden that comes with that as well. We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars in medical bills that can be, in addition to the issue of, the practice of medicine for the physician and also for the patient getting in really dangerous medical situations. So yes, they're coming for all of the things. They're not stopping. I mean, we know this has never been about abortion or babies or any of that. They're coming for all of it. Yeah.
So I wanted to address something about the question about endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome and all of the other things kind of in this reproductive umbrella. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, not that any of us are. I have spoken to enough of my colleagues that I really think that they think they're doing the right thing. Like, they really believe in their heart what they're doing. They really don't think they're hurting women. They don't want to hurt anybody, any people, any families, anything. They're coming to it from a place of faith, honestly, from a place of radical evangelical Christian faith. And I don't think that it is the intention of anybody in the legislature to ban treatment for PCOS or endometriosis or anything else. But the way that this could happen, the danger that this gets caught up in the dragnet of all the things that are affected by an abortion ban, is exactly what happened with LB 933 this year, which is it doesn't go through the committee process. There are subject matter experts on the committee, in the legal counsel of the committee, you know, advisors like those of you in this group who help us perfect a bill before it comes to the floor. In committee, we listen to this, you know, unpolished diamond, sometimes absolute piece of crap bill. And then in the committee process, we see what we can do with it to improve it. What happened with LB 933 is it never went through that process. So the piece of shit that was originally given to us to debate is what came to the floor. And it had a lot of problems with the language that probably would have been fixed if it had gone through the process. So it inadvertently banned long-term contraception like IUDs. It inadvertently banned in vitro fertilization treatments. And so I really don't think it was the intention of any of my colleagues to do that. It's just that they rushed the bill through and it never got fixed. It never was in like a presentable place. And so my concern of that happening again, I think that that's the only way an abortion ban comes to the floor is if it evades the committee process again. We would have to be very, very careful with the language of that bill and reading it very seriously to see what unintended consequences there could be in that bill. So that's why, you know, even if this is what you can say to your friends, you know, I know we're all preaching to the choir in this group, but this is what you can say to your friends who don't know what to do around this issue in terms of advocacy. Even if they've never had an abortion, even if they are, you know, not feeling so black and white on abortion, whatever it is, if they care about reproductive health care in general, this is the lens that they can come to my colleagues with and say, this is why we can't mess with, you know, the best practices that we have in Nebraska. This is why we trust our physicians, because these other treatments get caught in the dragnet of these bad bills that get written. So that's a long way to say we just have to be very careful of the language of whatever gets introduced. But that's also to say, I don't think anyone's going to introduce a bill like, let's ban PCOS treatment. Like no one's ever going to say that, but it could accidentally happen is my point.
I think we saw all of that, and Jen mentioned this too, right? Watching the debate for LB 933, where they're like, this doesn't criminalize doctors. Don't worry about it. And you're like, this is a 2.5-page bill that's supposed to span the entire spectrum of people's interaction with their reproductive health care. Like, what universe are we living in here, people? I mean, anyway. So yeah, so I think that's a really important point, and one too that, you know, I think talking to your senators who are anti-abortion and pointing that out again, I think like Megan said, they don't think that they're doing this. They don't think that they're hurting people. They're not seeing the consequences, which is another reason why we are all very clear about our position, which is no exceptions, no bans, no compromises, because there's just no way, nor should there be any way to like specifically regulate pieces of people's human rights. Like that's not a situation that we're ever gonna be in. I have one question unanswered in the chat, and that's do we have safety concerns about coming to the Capitol? I mean, I'm mostly terrified of that older lady tour guide. I think she's terrifying.
She's so, I mean,
an American hero, but she's very scary.
You have to do what makes you feel safe. I mean, maybe that means going with a group. Maybe that means calling the Women's Fund or Planned Parenthood or IB Black Girl and saying, when are you having a rally? Can I just come to that? It's the Capitol. I mean, it's safe. Things will happen anywhere. So you just have to decide what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I will say we will all of our organizations will also be there in support, and we do have plans, you know, to help people organize to get down there. I saw Rachel had mentioned in the chat, do we have t-shirts? I would love to have an official come talk to me about how to engage your senator in abortion t-shirt. I would love that. Maybe we'll work on it. So yeah, so we'll have a lot of organizational support around folks. So make sure you get connected to all of us, and we'll make sure that you have all of the tools and safety and everything that you need to feel comfortable and supported. Anita Hill said at our Lead the Change event, right? This isn't a sprint. This isn't even a marathon. It's actually a relay. So make sure that we're all taking care of each other and taking care of yourself. I need to take my own advice on that, but we're all going to be better together on this heading into session, because it's going to be long and hard. So just to conclude in the last final minute, and sorry, trying to be respectful of people's times, but trying to end on a high note here, what's bringing you hope right now in this work? Anyone can take it.
I'll start. I mean, we're all still here, right? Megan's still here. She just got reelected. Yay. We do have a great group of folks in the legislature that we know are going to fight until we're bloody in the face, like that's what brings me hope. Yes, in a landslide, she won. And we know where the numbers at majority wise in terms of Nebraskans and voters. And all of these people on this call, you're all here. This is what gives me hope, is having these conversations, being around like-minded people, knowing how people feel, having really great legislators that are willing to put themselves out there to do this really, really hard work. But I think we can do it. And it's a privilege to be in this position, and I never take it for granted. So yeah, all of you.
I will say one of the things that keeps me going and makes me hopeful. I've had this obsession with the maps that have been put out since like the thought of Roe being overturned kind of came to the public forefront. And if you kind of watch the progression of the maps, the very first ones, Nebraska was like bright red, definitely going to ban abortion, no chance in hell it's going to get saved there. And then like they've slowly had to adjust the maps because it's still legal here, folks. So whenever I get a little frustrated, I have like a PowerPoint literally with like a progression of maps in it that I look at. So
I'll say I tend to run a little depressed. I'm a glass half empty person. If you're looking for someone to encourage you, like, sorry, I'm probably not the one. But what's giving me hope right now is seeing so many people become activated for the first time. I'm not going to gatekeep anything about advocacy or activism or this issue. If you're not doing it exactly the right way, if you're not the most woke, like whatever, I don't need to judge any of that. I welcome so much all of the women and men and students and elders and all kinds of people who have reached out to me, reached out to Senator Day, reached out to all of us for the first time, like, okay, enough is enough. How do I get involved? And part of us can be like annoyed that it took this long, but I do not feel that way. I feel so encouraged by just the flood of people who are more upset about this ban than are happy about any kind of ban. I haven't heard anything from anybody who's like, oh, thank God women lost their rights. I love this. This is, really good. Finally, I haven't heard a peep of that. Even the most like right-wing religious normal people know this is nuanced. Normal people have had miscarriages. Normal people have had IVF treatment. Like, this is not a black and white issue. And so that's what has really encouraged me, is even seeing like the West Omaha soccer moms and everybody say, now I want to finally do something. And I'm so happy that they're here.
Just piggybacking off of that, people from across the state too. I mean, we have tracked like where supporters are, and they're everywhere. And just like Senator Hunt said, no one, I mean, this is not, these bans are not popular, and more and more people are getting engaged. So I would just echo that.
Also to piggyback off of that. So I think for me, it's kind of like we all said, the mobilization of people, but the brightest spot in my life, right, for me right now is seeing my teenage little sister actually giving a fuck about something, and to see that that's actually happening, like her friends, everybody, like, it's just, oh gosh, I'm just so happy to see that my sister is being raised right because of leaders like us, like people around the nation. And then that means, you know, my daughter gonna be right up behind them, and that I just future, like super future my daughters too. So like maybe in 18 years, but that's giving me hope.
Yeah, Naomi and I have similarly aged daughters. And my anytime you mention abortion in our house, my daughter says, "We won't go back," because that was like the first thing she did was go to a rally. So yeah, so you all bring me hope, you all bring me joy. I love working around you, with you, learning from you. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not great at sincerity, but you know that I mean that sincerely. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. This really was a great way to do a Tuesday. So I enjoyed spending space with you. Remember, this is a relay. Remember to stay hydrated. Remember to do one thing that brings you joy today. I meant water, Megan. Drink some water. Drink a seltzer. Okay. But anyway, I just want to thank everyone for joining, and have a great Tuesday. Make sure you're connected to our orgs, and let's get this done. Thanks all.